Okay, welcome back, everybody, to our third webinar in just a few weeks. We are on a roll, and we are really glad to have you guys back. We've been getting some good attendance numbers. Today, we are going to be talking about Google Drive and how to apply granular access data controls on Google Drive. And for that, we've brought Or Samel, who's from our product team, who hands-on works on this product, knows all about it. He's going to talk, and Corey, who everybody probably already knows, who is our director of product marketing. We're going to talk about, why people are needing this and talk about some of the pain points and use cases, and then we'll go give you guys a demo and show what it's like. As usual, if you want to ask questions, click on that little question mark in your right top console, and we'll get to those either as we go or towards the end. I will let you guys get to it.
Great. Thanks for the intro, Sam. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right. So again, my name is Corey O'Connor. Very pleased to be co-presenting with Or from our product team. As you can imagine, Google Drive is one of our primary applications. It's one of our most, commonly adopted set of use cases that our customers are applying DoControl to help secure. So very excited to be co-presenting today. Let's just quickly go through the agenda. So first, we're going to go through some general context on Google adoption rates and some of the exposure risks that exist. We're going to do a kind of a platform overview of DoControl and dial into how to implement granular data access controls with our solution, which will then segue into an actual solution demonstration that Or will be presenting, and we'll go through a number of use cases that are specific to Google Drive. And of course, we'll save some time for Q&A at the end. Before we get into it, just wanted to do a quick update or kind of some background information on DoControl for those that are unfamiliar with who we are and what we do. DoControl helps organizations prevent data breaches in the most popular and critical SaaS applications, and we try to find the perfect balance between providing strong security and enabling the business. We provide security and IT teams with the automated self-service tools that they need for data access monitoring, orchestration, and remediation within SaaS apps. In terms of the financial backing, we're backed by RTP Global, Stage 1 Ventures, Cardamom Capital, and global cybersecurity leader CrowdStrike. They have an early stage investment fund called the CrowdStrike Falcon Fund. They've invested in DoControl twice. They're an investor, they're a technology partner, and they are a customer. So that's just some high-level detail on the company. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So to kind of set the stage here, I wanted to highlight a couple of recent statistics that I pulled from Okta's annual Businesses at Work. Businesses at Work is an annual report that pulls from their over 14,000 customers, as well as over 7,000 integrations with cloud, mobile, and web app, as well as IT infrastructure providers. So it's a really great resource, especially the recent report that came out certainly supports what we're doing at DoControl. And drilling specifically into Google Workspace was the third most popular application, 38% year-over-year growth, which you can see on the slide. One of the interesting trends that I took away from this year's report, when you look back from earlier reports back from 2015, the category of content collaboration is and has been the most popular application category. So there's a clear need for organizations to adopt these SaaS applications that enable their users to collaborate on content, access files, share files, really use these tools to help drive the business forward. Another interesting data point is the multi-vendor adoption statistics, which you can see here. This is one that I pulled that's relevant. Microsoft 365 customers are also deploying other applications that have essentially the exact same functionality within some of the services that you get with 365. So 45% also use Zoom, 33% are also deploying Slack, and then obviously Google Workspace at 38%, which was an increase from last year's report. So Google Drive, it's a file storage and synchronization service that allows users to store files in the cloud, synchronize files across devices, and share files. It is focused on content collaboration. It is not focused on security. With that said, Google Drive is not insecure in and of itself, but similarly structured as a service. When it comes to security, it's a shared responsibility model. And I think the same should be applied to SaaS application environments. The provider of the service needs to ensure that it is secure, but the consuming entity of the service, it's their responsibility to ensure, the security of how the application is used, the workflows that are created, again, and that's where DoControl, really adds significant value, not only to Google Drive, but all of the critical SaaS applications that modern businesses are using to drive their business forward. So I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Orr, who's going to speak on the actual Google Drive admin console. So take it away.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, thanks, Corey. So this is not to say that the Google Admin Console is inadequate or anything, about the functionality of the of Google Drive itself, but just there are some elements, as we can see here in this screenshot, that are simply lacking, or just like Corey said, that the way that were built were not maybe in security in mind. So just a few examples here. So as we can see in the left-hand side of the screen, so this is an actual screenshot from the super admin of DoControl's Google Drive of our workspace. So even our own super admin cannot see all the shared folders in the organization, right? He can see only the ones that are shared with him. And there are many, many others in our organization. So I bet this situation is quite frequent, not to mention OneDrives, right? Which are much harder, my drives, which are much harder to manage and gain the visibility a super admin needs. If we look at the right-hand side of the screen, so we see this file system loop, which is great for some functionality, but again, it's really, really hard for me as the admin to understand what type of data is shared with whom and who has access to which type of data. The searching capabilities are quite limited here. So for instance, if I want to see who are my external users who have access to data, or filter according just to the owners or whatever, I'm quite limited in the way I can filter the data. If we move on to the next slide, so we can see another example, which is the Google alerting mechanism, right? So I can set up some useful alerts in my Google Admin Console, but the point of view, like the starting point are Google Drive events, right? The events that Google Drive sees, not the user actions, right? And it's much harder for me to set up meaningful alerting that actually will make sense and will be easy for me to manage when when I try to set up my alerting that way. And I think that we'll cover it and see it much clearly later on when we see the DoControl platform. Back to you, Corey.
Thanks, Or. So let's just take a quick moment to present the current state. So when you look at how most organizations today are structured, you have an identity provider on the left-hand side of the graphic, right? So these solutions are responsible for assigning the appropriate permissions, entitlements, and privileges at the identity level. So giving all of your users, it's really critical, the least privilege principle here at the identity level, right? Now, once you have to provide those users a secure connection. So typically a zero trust network access solution is instrumental in providing a secure connection or brokering a secure, connection for those identities from whatever devices that they're, logging in from to connect to whatever the critical target applications that they need to do their job effectively, right? So that's in the middle of the graphic. You get through the identity layer, you now have a secure connection, and now you essentially have, access to all of the different applications that you should have access to. The challenge is, if you look to the right-hand side of the graphic, there's a number of different personas and identities that you really lose, scope and lose control over. Who can access specific files and who's sharing files with which identity. Are they internal employees? Are they former employees? Are these current vendors? Are they vendors and contractors that have an expired relationship with? Who has access to some of the sensitive data that exists? And most times, if you don't have the appropriate controls in place, there's files that are sitting out there that are still accessible through a link, unless you go back in and manually remove access, which is obviously not a scalable approach. Now, when you look at each specific application provider, they do have native features and functionality to mitigate the risk of data overexposure, data exfiltration, generic cyber breach prevention. But the challenge is it becomes a scalable problem. You have all of these different applications, and relying on the native functionality within each application is not going to work. It's not going to scale. And there's no way to centrally enforce data access control policies. When you have all these different applications with different users and identities that are accessing them, you end up with a decentralized security structure where you have each application sits within its own silo. It's complex. It's hard to secure. So that's the opportunity for DoControl. We are dedicated in creating an environment where you can control access and provide secure access to those critical applications for all of your users. It's not just your internal workforce. It's also the third-party vendors and external collaborators. So again, this is a problem. Your risk exposure runs really high. It increases the likelihood of a data breach or a cyber attack. Going back to the Okta Businesses at Work report, they highlight a number of the average number of applications for an enterprise, and it came in just under 200 applications per company. So again, if you think about all of the users that have access to all of the tens to hundreds of applications and the hundreds of thousands of files and assets that are being accessed, manipulated, and shared throughout the environment, this is a problem. And again, this is what DoControl is aiming to help solve for. And why should you implement DoControl? What's the value add for Google Drive instances? We provide a foundational layer of preventative controls to protect that sensitive business critical data and files within Google Drive environments. So we integrate, with Google Drive to secure all the shared data and files that are accessed by every identity, every entity, both internal employees, as well as those third-party collaborators. Our granular data access controls are going to help prevent, again, that data overexposure and data exfiltration. We automatically remediate the risk of things like insider threats, and we allow for business enablement to be achieved in a secure way. I mentioned earlier, we're super focused on enabling businesses in a secure way, striking that balance between security and productivity. How does it actually work? If you look on the right-hand side of the graphic here, the platform itself is completely event-driven. So every critical application that the DoControl solution is subscribed to will trigger events, right? So there's hundreds of SaaS events that are taking place within a standard, SaaS application environment. And when those events are triggered, we're able to enable our customers to create secure workflows. So as soon as it's in near real time, so as soon as an event is triggered, you can define policies and workflows that will, remediate specific actions. You can notify specific teams and identities in the event of, actions taking place. It's completely agentless. There's no software installations of any kind. And as I mentioned before, it's all API based and webhook based. And then if you look on the left-hand side of the graphic, it's essentially this bidirectional feed where we're ingesting data from your IDP. So all the groups and domains and identities that are structured or that exist within IDP is fed into DoControl. So that allows us to, apply specific access controls to specific groups, domains, and identities. Not every user needs the same level of security controls to be applied. So this allows us to enable, again, granular access controls. The HR application. So in the instance of employment status changes, if you have an employee that's leaving, you can define a policy that revokes access for that departing employee so they can't take with them sensitive data and files. This is a standard use case that we see every day with our customers. And then the other tiles on the graphic are existing security investments that you might have made, where DoControl is providing, business context and adding value to those existing investments that you've already made. So let's kind of focus on Google Drive, right? So one of the primary benefits of integrating DoControl with Google Drive is around visibility and control. So, and Or mentioned this in some of the slides earlier, Google Drive lacks the visibility that you need to manage and control access for specific groups that regularly manipulate and share sensitive files. When you think of the number of users and assets within a standard Google Drive implementation, especially for an organization of a larger size, it becomes unmanageably high. It's significant. And this is a problem, right? When you're trying to attempt to secure data and access, data files within the application. And this is something specific that Or had covered. As a Google administrator, you're limited to the drives that only you as an individual user have access to. So gaining insight into all of the different shared drives throughout the company is not possible, which is challenging. If your job is to protect and validate user access throughout the entire company, and you don't have that level of visibility, then you're in trouble. And at DoControl, again, we allow our customers to gain full awareness of every Google Drive entity that's accessing corporate data, and that process allows them to identify what actually needs to be protected. And from there, they can create policy that allows for secure, file shares and file exchange between internal and external users. The next benefit is closing enforcement gaps. So Google Drive admins are limited to public and private, right, for file permissions. Links to assets are, you have the ability to enable them to remain essentially indefinitely, right? So far longer than they actually need to be. And depending on how the organization is set up, they can essentially be changed by any individual. And again, when you try to perform manual access reviews to unshare specific files, this is not effective. It does not scale. You'd have to identify each individual asset and remove permissions on an individual basis, which again is not a good use of time and resources. In a DoControl, we're providing the granularity that you need to enforce the principle of least privilege to the Google Drive application data layer. So access to sensitive data within Google Drive is provided for only the appropriate amount of time, and then it's revoked. And those users can then share or request access in a just-in-time manner, again, to help balance out that security and end user productivity challenge. The third thing is securing third-party access. So Google Drive does not have the ability to enforce the prevention of sharing documents on a shared drive from an approved third party to, say, additional vendors, i.e. a fourth party. So once those assets are shared out to those approved third parties, then do with the actual data is out of scope, it's out of control for the organization that originally had the owner of the content. So we help address this downstream effect of file sharing to those potentially unapproved or unauthorized vendors, and again mitigating the risk of data leakage. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hand the baton back over to Or, so we can
Thanks,
do
Corey.
solution demo.
And let me quickly share my screen. Okay, and now we're seeing the DoControl platform, and let's have a look at how things really works. So I won't go into much details about that, but just like Corey mentioned, we have a rather simple integration. We're using the service accounts and APIs to integrate with our customers' Google Drive, and then pull the data in real time or near real time to give the data freshness that we need. So we've talked a lot about visibility. Let's see what it means in reality. So let's start with the user's perspective. In DoControl, it's super easy to get and in one glimpse or a very easily understanding of who our users are, who are our internal users, and maybe more importantly, even who are our external users, right? So I can really in a one click get like a summarized view of everyone from outside of my organization who has access to any type of data within my environment. And obviously I can go and look for any particular external user. So let's look at this specific external user that has access to DoControl data. We can look at who this external collaborator is. We can see very easily what type or what are the exact assets, type of data that this user has already access to. And we can even, since everything here is interconnected, we can drill down even furthermore, and we can see here that this user has an access to an asset which is clearly marked as internal only. I can go and look a little bit more about this particular asset and gain more understanding about the data behavior and seeing all the related events. Now, we're talking a lot about the visibility, which is super important, but visibility without the ability to do something about it is, again, lacking. And the cool part about DoControl is that we not only give you the understanding of what's going on with your data, we're also providing you a real easy way to remediate the situation. So here from the platform, I can very easily just hit this remove external collaborators, and I will in one click remove all the external collaborators who are part or have access to this particular asset. I can take another approach. I can decide that I want to remove this particular collaborator at all, right? This is a Gmail account. Private accounts are less secure. I don't want in my organization to have private accounts wandering around, having access to my data, so I can just remove this one collaborator from here, or pick a bunch of them and just remove everything together. Okay, so I can do this in batches as well. Now, we talked about how we can see our users and their data, but let's see how we can go around and effectively search the assets that we have in our organization, right? So obviously not everything here is interesting, and we don't want to have like too much information to handle at once. So we have in DoControl very, very granular filters that can help us really go to the information that is interesting for us, that we think that might pose a threat or pose an exposure risk for the organization. So let's start with a simple example. So let's filter for everything that is shared publicly, right? But let's not stop here, right? So in many cases, sharing stuff publicly is totally fine, right? We can see here Sam, who is with us today from the marketing department. That's probably totally fine, right? But we can, and I think Corey mentioned that before, we can also connect with the IDP. And in this case, I want to see everything that is shared publicly from the finance department, because when you think about it, finance department don't really need to share stuff publicly, right? So I can filter my assets, or I filter my page to show only that relevant information. So I can really pinpoint my searches to only show the relevant data. The same thing can apply for a specific owner or a drive or a shared drive, and so on and so forth. And obviously, what I can do from here, I can remediate the situation. I can remove the public sharing and eliminate the threat. Now, that's all great, and these are indeed great methods to reduce my existing problems. But what I want to do is to, over time, make sure that my attack surface doesn't grow, that I don't allow new violations of a company policy, of our organization policy, to occur in the future. Obviously, I cannot go and I don't want to go periodically and fix this. I want DoControl to do that for me. So lucky for us, we have our security workflows. Security workflows are intended to do just that. These are automated a playbook. We have, and we'll see in a second, we have a rich catalog of them that can remediate and prevent threats from different threat models, but they can also be tailor-made to your own needs. So let's have a look on a few examples. So first of all, when I try to, or when I want to implement our security workflows, I can take two approaches. One of them, I can start thinking from the use case. Do I want to prevent public sharing, or do I want to prevent exposure risk coming from external sharing, or I want to focus on a specific application, right? So in this case, let's start with a Google Drive, a automated workflow that is designed to automatically expire external sharing. So as Corey mentioned before, when we share stuff, when we share data externally with our vendors, with our partners, we don't want this data to stay open or stay out there indefinitely, right? We want to make sure we are closing this gap, and we are not leaving this sensitive information out there for good. So what are workflows? Workflows are event-driven automation playbooks, which are starting from a trigger, right? A user action, which is much easier to think for us as administrators or security team members, and are designed to help us remediate specific user actions that might pose a security risk for us. So in this case, we see a workflow that allows us to automatically remove the sharing of an internal asset that's been shared externally after 30 days. So let's go and see how it is built in DoControl. So we'll start with a trigger. A trigger in this case is a change user access event, but it makes sense that we would like to apply some more advanced conditions on top of this event, right? So like we mentioned before, not all departments, not all users have or need to have the same privileges, right? So for instance, perhaps in my organization, it's totally okay that marketing and sales will be able to share indefinitely, and that's totally fine, right? So for instance, in this case, I can set the condition to not apply, okay, let's say not in group, not to apply on marketing, okay, and on sales. I can take it directly from my IDP. Now, I don't want to prevent sharing with a few selected domains, or a few selected targets that I know that they are okay to share with, right? So we have a concept within DoControl. We call it trusted domains. It will automatically identify based on data we pull from Google Drive, your internal domains, but you can also add some other domains that you manage in other platforms or vendors that you trust and you constantly work with, and you don't want to prevent sharing with them. So I can also apply this on the target, and I want to make sure that the target is not part of a group that I'm okay to share data with. Okay, so we have our trigger. We are feeling good with it. And the next step in this sequential workflow is an email that is notifying our actor, the person who actually shared the data, that what we're doing, or the sharing action, will be revoked within 30 days, okay, due to a company policy, right? So we can see here the data, and we can pull, we can either craft our own message with plain text. We can use data from the event itself, right? So we can pull the actor, for example, or the name of the asset that has been shared, and other types of information. You can see here the data. Okay, you can see. Sorry, you can see here the email as it will be sent to the user, and we can configure how much time we want to wait until we revoke the access. Now, that's great, but what if I want to have a more a complex scenario, right? So I want to allow our users to take an active decision whether they want to keep the sharing or not, right? So I can take a decision as the administrator, or as the security manager, that every external sharing will be revoked after 30 days. But maybe this is not what fits my organization, right? Maybe I don't have the full context which my users have. So what I can do here, I can add another, and by the way, we have here a bulk of additional steps that we can use, like additional remediation steps. And in this case, we'll use the approve step, okay? We want to have a little bit more complexity into this, or a little bit more sophistication, I would say, into this workflow. And I want to add an approval prior to removing the sharing, right? So after 30 days, we will automatically ask the actor who originally shared the document, or shared the asset, whether they need to keep it or not. In case they don't, we will remove the collaboration. If they don't answer for whatever reason, we will also remove the collaboration. We can configure a timeout for that. But if they do need the asset being shared, we can generate a loop here, and we will wait for another 30 days before we ask them again. Obviously, we can customize that to be sent via an email or via Slack. We can have someone specific in Slack, or just use the actor itself to get the approval. Now, right now, we've built a complete workflow. We can save it, save as a new workflow, and that's it. Every will be covered in the event of every new external sharing. Now, I do want to show one last thing, how this really works in practice. So in this case, I have here our mock sales lead spreadsheet. And me as a product manager in the organization, I shouldn't share this with any private account, right? This doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Maybe I'm doing it by mistake. I meant to send it to Corey, but somehow misspelled it, and I'll just hit here send, and send it anyway, and share this. Now, in a second, what I will be presented with is our DoBot, or our Slack messaging, just the one from the approval step, which I showed you before, that is telling me, hey, you just shared sales leads with a Gmail account. Okay, are you sure you want to keep this sharing? So in case I did it by mistake, no harms was done. I just simply click remove share, right? Another notification will be sent obviously to the security team, and they can manage this as well. But this is a very useful tool to also offload some of the burden from the security team to the actual user. So now, after I've seen my error, I can quickly remove the sharing, and the Gmail account will no longer have access to the document. And with that, I will end my demo and hand it over back to you, Corey.
Thanks for that, Or. Okay, great. So that was just one use case, right? There's a number of use cases, and as Or presented earlier, there's a whole catalog of predefined templates or workflows that our product and engineering team has created to benefit our customers. So it's simple, it's super simple, it's super easy to create these workflows. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Google Drive is one of our primary applications that our customers have asked us to, create a number of templates to support. So there's a long list of pre-existing templates that you can take advantage of. But with that, just wanted to quickly summarize today's webinar. So a couple of quick things. Hopefully this was covered in great detail, but visibility, into the individual users and the interactions within Google Drive. I know Or had gone through that tab within the console and shown how we provide that visibility across both internal and external users. Again, risk-based approach to securing Google Drive. I think the granularity that we deliver will help support that. And the DoBot part of the demo was another way to help balance the workload for the IT security team and really wrap security around the things that are most risky. Mitigating the risk of data overexposure and exfiltration, that was hopefully clearly covered. Again, I've already covered the granular access controls, and Or did a great job presenting that in the demo. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier in the presentation the adoption and multi-vendor applications, using a number of different applications from different vendors that have similar functionality. I think it's critical to find a solution that helps support a single security strategy for all of those critical SaaS applications. And again, that's what we're doing at DoControl. If you're interested in hearing more, if you want to see additional use cases, if you want to meet with one of our experts, you can go to docontrol.io, request a demo. We can also do a risk assessment to help you uncover your risk exposure throughout your SaaS application environment. So again, if you're interested, check out our website, request a demo. And with that, Sam, I'll hand it back over to you. If there's any Q&A, we can take it now.
Okay, cool. If you do have questions, just click on that question mark on the top right. If you're watching this on demand, just get in your time machine and come back. Let's see here. So you mentioned multi-vendor environments early on. Do you provide similar capabilities for other SaaS platforms other than Google Drive?
Yeah, so yes, I think we covered that, especially in the closing, right? That's really what we're focused on, is having a consistent, centralized way to implement data access controls throughout all of your critical SaaS applications. It's not just Google Drive. There's Box and Dropbox, Or do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that covers the gist of it. Yeah.
Let's see, another question here. In the demo, you focused on how to trigger an action following an external share. Can the trigger be customized to other events?
Yes. So the beauty of the security workflows is that, we provide you with this rich catalog of different use cases. External sharing is only one example. We also cover out of the box public sharing and other use cases. But the real beauty here is that it can be customized for every single event that is sent out from the different SaaS providers and received by DoControl. So it can be, if we look at specifically on Google Drive, it can be an upload of a file, download, viewing a particular asset, or or changing a particular asset in a specific sensitive file, or you name it. The number of possibilities is only limited by the number of events that can be triggered by the different SaaS applications. So definitely customizable.
Fantastic. I think that was the last question, and I think that's perfect because it's all the time we have for today. Great job. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys all next month, where I believe we're going to be talking about the NIST standards in Zero Trust and some really cool stuff around applying Zero Trust to data access, which, most people think of the network layer, but the data layer is just as important, and people are realizing that the Zero Trust rules apply to that too. So we're going to talk about that, and bring your questions. We always love those. And thanks again, guys. See you guys in the next one. Take care.